Everybody, this is the Finance Committee. This is Thursday, October 23rd, 2025. I have exactly 4:04 p.m. This meeting will be video recorded and broadcast over local access channel 8 and through the town website at www.eastham-ma.gov. I'm looking at the, the agenda. Does anybody, we have no public, does anybody on the committee have any comment or question before we begin?
I have a quick comment.
Sure.
I just wanted to say that the podcast that we were just talking about was phenomenal. The new podcast that you and Kayla were making, and they were informative, fun, just went above and beyond for a town to do something like that. People really enjoyed it and just got a lot out of it. So
Good.
I see it.
I see it on YouTube.
Yeah.
The town of East Ham Station on YouTube.
I can send you the
At
link.
YouTube either.
I'll send you the link, Peter.
All our meetings are posted on YouTube, Finance Committee, Select Board, the podcast, but it was also posted on the town Facebook page with the link.
Okay.
And then it's also on Spotify, the audio version. So if you listen
Not
to,
on the town website.
I think there's a link on the town website to it, yeah.
I think it takes you to YouTube. Does it take
Okay.
you, it
Yeah.
exits you to YouTube?
The town has a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
did a financial update on the budget process. So I think it's great to use as a tool for anything that people have questions on or.
Yeah, and Mary, I actually should have brought this up when we talked the other day. Put in a lot of plugs for the Finance Committee for all the good work you do. It wasn't really on the budget process, it's more on the financial planning process.
Mhm.
And then we get into budget season, we'll do one on specifically on the budget, but it was more along the
The process.
preparation work that the Finance Committee does all year round to be able to opine and have feelings about the budget. So it's not like you're just looking at the budget in a vacuum, you're looking at the context of everything. So I probably should send it out to each of you as a link that you can just click
Yeah.
on email. So
You could send that link to everybody on the
Yeah.
committee.
Yep, I'll do that.
Where was it taken? Because I did see some of it from Patty and I couldn't tell where it was taken.
We did it at the Lower Cape TV.
In
studio.
Orleans?
Yeah.
I was, that was wondering what Patty thought that was the case, yeah.
And we've got, so that was the first one. I just want to break the ice for everybody, and now people are kind of getting excited about it. So the second one was Hillary, and I think that's coming out today or tomorrow. Our Health and Environment Director on Credible Minds program, social service program, and our community fridge. So that was pretty good. And then we'll be doing one. The next one I think will probably be on taxpayer assistance program since it's timely.
Mhm.
So I want to do one on that, and then we've got the COA interested, and so we're generating some interest. And then since you mentioned it, I'll keep saying more about it. One of the features we want to have at the end of the podcast, every podcast will have a topic, and then we'll have a segment where we go on what's going to be happening in town for the coming month or so. And then we have a segment that we haven't done yet, but we'd like to do if people have specific questions that we can answer about the town. So if anybody out there is listening and wants to have a question they want answered, we have an email, social media at eastham-ma.gov. You can submit your question, and as long as it's appropriate, we'll respond to it and answer it.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Questions, yeah, I like that.
The search committee is going to be using it as well in order to get the word out that we would love to have people apply for boards and committees. And I'm saying that publicly here as well, in case
Yeah.
people are listening out there.
Yeah, we hadn't thought about that too much, but a lot of committees do some great work, and they might
Mhm.
be an avenue for them to kind of advertise what
Mhm.
they're doing. So.
Yep.
Yep.
And you and Kayla did a great job. You guys are really good together, so.
It was rough. So I need to,
I thought there was some humor in it.
but we really have to give credit to Rafael, who kind of edited it and covered up a lot of our bad spots. But the trick really is not to be too prescribed and not too prepared, especially on the finance stuff. The first half of that video, I was kind of going by a script too much because I knew the questions, so I was ready for the questions. But then afterwards, it's like, oh, this is bad. So it's like at the second half, I got more. It's just like I forgot the script and just kind of went off the top of my head. It was much more conversational,
Mhm.
So
And fun.
it'll take more
Fun.
practice,
Yeah,
but we'll get
Some
better.
humor,
Fun.
some humor, yeah. Yeah. Okay, I'm on to the agenda and I'm on to item number 3. And we have 3 different sets of minutes from our 3 last meetings. And the first one that I'd like to do is the July 24th meeting. And Fred, I have you as absent for that meeting. I don't know whether you watched it online or not, but, okay.
I think your microphone. is
Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of July 24th, 2025?
I'll move.
I'm sorry, Roy,
Yes.
I'll second.
Kate? Any discussion on the minutes of July 24th, 2025? All in favor of approving the minutes? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. Thank you. Then we're going to go on to the minutes of the next meeting, which was September 4th.
I can move that they be approved.
Kate,
Mhm.
and do I have a second to approve the minutes of September 4th?
Second?
Patty? Is there any discussion on the minutes of September 4th? All in favor of approving the minutes of September 4th? One, and again, Fred, you were absent. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 0. And thank you. And on to the last one of the 3, which is September 25th. We were all present at this meeting.
I did send a minor change.
Yeah,
Can-
I have one too.
Oh,
Go, yeah,
okay.
go, yeah. Go ahead, speak.
It was just the spelling change for
Yeah,
Cameron
yes,
Scott.
yeah, right.
And then when later on, when she's talking about what he said, she called him Scott. I didn't know if she wanted the first name Cameron or Scott or refer the last name. But it sounded
Yeah,
good.
and I have, under 4A, the word is deterred. I think it should be deferred. Assessing department item deferred for next meeting.
That word in a few places.
And the same thing down in 6A, investment policy item deferred. So we have 2 corrections for the word deferred in 4A and 6A. And we have the correction of the name of, under staff representatives at the top. Scott should be SCOTT. Are there any other?
What, I'm a little confused because 2 of those for September 25th came out.
Yeah,
Oh, it's-
came out.
Which,
Oh, it's the second
but
one.
which one is the one we're voting on? Because I have 2 different September 25th minutes. Same agenda, but quite different.
Oh, just,
They both came yesterday, I thought.
Perhaps. You relay these corrections to Mira and then she corrected it and resent them out yesterday?
this is,
Oh, it's-
only have one here.
She sent a second email, right? with
yeah,
this-
yeah,
That must be the final version.
the final version.
Okay,
But I don't
the
have.
one that came this morning.
I don't have 4A.
We don't have the final.
It
version.
came this morning, I think. Or
Yeah, here's
late
the
yesterday.
Yeah, the one that came yesterday.
So that's, yeah. One came yesterday afternoon.
Together with all the other
Yeah, yeah,
materials.
Well, we got the corrections, so if you want to move it with the corrections, we'll just make sure
Yeah.
they get done.
I'm gonna make a motion that the minutes of September 25th be approved as amended.
I'll second.
1, 2, 3, all in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7, 0. As amended. And I forgot to write down who,
I did, Mary.
you made the motion, Paul?
I think you did, and I seconded. it.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Okay, very good. So we've done the minutes. Let me get back to my agenda here. All righty. I'm on to, at the agenda, item number 4, departmental update and the residential tax exemption update. And do you want to talk about that, Rich, or how do you want to proceed?
Yep, I have some update, also under that item we had talked about on the schedule. I think the accounting office was in on the schedule, but I was away and didn't really have a chance to talk with Tina about that. But I did talk with her this morning, so I think she's on board for next month, so. We'll do that, which is good because she submitted a bunch of reports that she's required to do to the Department of Revenue,
Mhm.
which hopefully will get,
Final.
approved by them by that time, so. Would be a better update to know that that's all done and approved,
Mhm.
so. Hopefully we'll be on track for that.
So you're saying Colleen will be attending?
No, Tina.
Oh, Tina,
Accounting.
okay.
As far as the RTE update, I did meet with Colleen about that. And to date, we've processed, well, I should say, prior to the tax bills being issued, so the benefit of the RT was included in the tax bill that the taxpayer
Mhm.
received, was 1,387.
1,003 what?
87.
1,387?
And then after the bills have been issued, so after the fact, we've had 35 people come in and apply, and those have been approved. And we have got 3 in the queue to be approved, so it likely would be approved. So a total of 38. So that's 1,425. And the value of those 38, as far as abatements that have to be issued now, let's see, 30. Each of them is the value of 3% is $187 reduction. So 38 times the 187 is $7,106 against that $200,000 that we've provided for.
So the 1,087 was people who were approved before the tax bills went out.
Mhm,
You only had 38 come in afterwards?
Yes.
mhm.
So that's quite different than, you know,
They got the
the
notice.
2,580 that we estimated, you know,
Mhm.
at a 55-45. So if you were to, let me work that math backwards for a second. So 2580, how do I do that? Divide by 0.45, right?
You're saying that the total possible is 2,580?
So that's what we thought.
Right, oh, okay.
If it was a 55-45 split,
Right,
2,580.
right.
But these numbers,
There's almost 900 still out there.
1,425 total so far. Divided by, if that were true, that represents the resident population, that would be just under 20, just about 25%. So it'd be indicative of a 75-25 split.
Yeah.
Now, you know, I don't think that's real, but
So we don't know. We don't have any other way to measure the year-round population?
well, that's what we try to do. That's why we came up, how we came up with the
Right.
55-45, because we looked at the
Voter
Um,
roll, right?
What's, I forget what it's called already, the clerk's list,
Yeah.
the town clerk does the annual census
Voting
listing.
and stuff,
And
right.
we look at the personal property tax bills. If you're a resident, you don't get a personal property tax bill. So,
So that is probably a more accurate estimate than.
right, but the reality is you only process things based on what you actually get in for
Right.
applications, so maybe if the 45% resident tax base is correct, but this is reflective of about 25% at the moment, so.
Yeah.
But then your other point, we spoke the other day, was that maybe people are just being slow because it's only 3% and it's not that valuable, but as the, if.
Yeah,
the-
they paid the bill
if
yet.
the
Percentage
goes up,
increases?
Well, they got another week to pay the bill.
Well, for this year, but next year,
Right.
select board increases it, they might get more people coming out of the woodwork.
Well, I mean, 3% is worth $187, so.
Mhm.
And the other piece of it is that I spoke to 3 different people, all of whom work full-time. And I asked them if they had done it, as I usually try to ask everybody who's full-time. And they said they didn't have time. These are folks that work full-time, sometimes, more than one job. So they said, we're gonna get to it. We just haven't had time. So I'm thinking this might have been a really busy month for people, maybe getting kids back to school. I don't know.
Well,
So,
other than we've had all summer to
Mm,
have
yeah.
them
I
to-
know,
Right.
I know. but
And-
I
and
think they
workshop,
did.
But that's
and-
good feedback because perhaps before the deadline of, spring comes for when you
Mhm.
can't apply for it, maybe we could hold some evening hours or something, or, even a weekend hours for people at work.
Mm,
The other thing you might do too, and I'm sure you've considered this, is the folks that haven't applied for it yet, who are eligible, do a separate mailing. Just something fun. You're missing out.
Do we know how many people that live here full-time, but they weren't eligible because the house is in a trust or in a,
Yeah, we could get that.
I mean, what if there's hundreds? I don't know if there are.
No, I don't- there
are.
weren't. There was a handful.
There's a handful. So
Yeah.
do you know the amount of people that lived here full-time that were rejected because of that? Like, do you have?
I
the-
don't, but I'm
'cause that would be-
pretty sure Colleen could get
Yeah,
that.
because that would be taken out of that
Yeah.
eligible.
And those funds, if they're not claimed, turn into free cash, is that what happens?
Well, it's an article, so it just carries over until the purpose is accomplished, so I would submit that, if the RTE continues, that any unused funds would carry over, because, we'll always have some amount of people that come in after the fact,
Mhm.
and if,
So they have till April, don't they?
right, and, well, even after 2 years of having this in place, there's always gonna be somebody that comes in after the fact, and if, we get it to a higher percentage than 3%, the value of that abatement would become greater too. So having this money available for that for the next few years until everything kind of settles down would probably be helpful. The other issue that has come to light, we know of 2 people that said they didn't apply because their house was over the break-even point, so they thought there was no benefit. But there is a benefit.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's for everybody.
You're paying right, so,
Increase is lower.
your taxes are going up because you're paying the higher rate and you're not getting the value, and the value of the RTE doesn't offset that.
Mhm.
But if you don't apply for the RTE, then you haven't offset anything and you're just paying the higher rate.
Right, right.
So,
so if we have all these people that may be eligible to apply, but they haven't, and we've raised the tax rate, we're gonna get extra revenue.
no,
No, why not?
because it's reflective in the tax, what's in the tax, that's why
Oh,
we
that was
try to,
based on the original,
Tax
Right.
rate.
the 13, and okay,
we can only raise the levy that we're allowed to raise.
okay,
It's just they're getting allocated more than they
right.
could be getting. And the non-residents are paying less
Right.
than they could be if everybody had applied.
If everybody had applied.
Were there any people that were eligible for the 3%, but decided that they weren't going to go through the process?
Anecdotally, I think there was a couple, but
Mm.
it's hard to say unless they come out and just tell you.
Yeah.
I've heard a couple people say that's what they did. Whether they actually did, I hadn't gone back and checked, but
So of all the people, based on what we know right now, of all the people that are eligible but have not applied, do we know what that amount would be if we had to pay it out because of the 200,000 that we have in the budget?
it was about 200,000.
It's equals to about 200,000?
And that's why we proposed and recommended the 3%.
Yeah,
That was-
the 3% because it
200,000.
equated to the 200,000.
Right.
Okay. Okay, I see there was something in the paper the other day that I think it's Yarmouth, that,
No, Dennis.
Dennis.
yeah, Dennis.
Yeah, so it's, Orleans is considering it. Chatham has said they're gonna do it for next year.
Hmm.
And, now Dennis is got it on the table.
Yep.
And then we got Brewster and Harwich in between, so, it's the way things go, I'm sure that then they'll bring it up, so.
Yeah, and is there something that was discussed at the select board a while back about homes that are rented out on a full-time basis, being able to apply the 3% to those homes, those
Yep.
taxes?
Well, that's not provided for under law.
I know.
So that is something that, we'll be looking at when we open up the town meeting warrant. I think that's that special legislation, that
Mhm.
home rule charter
Mhm.
provision is something I think they're interested in putting on the warrant. So if that does pass, then we got to get the legislature to approve it. So that's a, year or two process. But presumably that would get passed because other towns have had that pass.
Mm.
And then that would be an add-on to the RTE,
mm.
anybody that's offers their property for year-round rental.
Okay. What does the select board feel about that, do you know?
I think they're supportive of it, but
supportive-
we haven't had the.
Yeah, yeah,
discussion
a
yet.
vote, yeah, yeah. Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the residential tax exemption? I'm going to go on to item number 5 of the agenda, the fiscal year 2026 first quarter update.
So there's I don't have the big packet in front of
There
me.
you go.
It's a big packet of information, probably more than you really want to see. But our financial management software does produce a new report that seemed, maybe interesting. It does give you a level of detail. I'm not going to dwell on the detail. But the first several pages of it, pages 1 through 11, is what's called the income statement report out of our draft off our financial management system. It shows all the individual revenue and all the individual expense accounts of the general fund. And it shows how much we spent through September for this fiscal year compared to the prior 2 fiscal years, just as a frame of reference. I'm not sure how useful any of that is. Some of our expenses are pretty straight line and evenly occurred throughout the year. Others aren't, like, our $2.5 million pension assessment is all paid on January 1. We get a discount if we pay early, so we take advantage of that. As long as we've got the cash flow, our debt isn't even, it comes on and goes out at different times of the year. So it's not particularly useful.
But the top line on the first page,
Mm.
there was the general fund balance for 2024 was 1,000,003 and then 0 the next two.
Yeah, you really have to discount that line. That has to do with transfers, and I don't know why we had transfers in that year, but
Okay,
it's probably some way we voted the budget. That's probably how we did it.
gotcha.
More summarized and easier to digest is after that first 11 pages. There's a page, it's a spreadsheet, which I exported from our financial management system and then manipulate it to, make it look a little bit better. And it says FY26 year-to-date local revenue trend report
Mhm.
through September. I think that's it there, Roy. This is a little easier to adjust. This is just our revenues. And we start with our property taxes, then we go into a section on state aid, and then we go into our local receipts is kind of what I focus on. Property taxes is kind of tough to look at and judge, because the big thing, which is evident in this fiscal year, is we've only collected about 473,000, where in prior years we've collected over to the right hand side of that, you see the prior 3 years, well over $1 million each of those prior 3 years. That has to do with the timing of issuance of the tax bills. So in the prior 3 years, we've been pretty timely getting the bills out in
Oh.
August, if at latest September. So we had a lot of payments coming in before the end of the first quarter. This year, it's reflective that we didn't get the bills out until September. No, end of September.
End of September.
So we got a small amount of payments in, but the bill's not due. The bill's never due to November 1. But when you get the bill out early in August, early September, you do get a lot of prepayments. So
Does the fact that you didn't get as much money in under normal circumstances cause any problems with paying for things?
not this year. But that's why normally we would like to do that and be upwards of $1.5 million.
Mm.
Does help with the cash flow because we are a semi-annual community, not a quarterly community. And that's something that's come up before.
We don't have any plans to support that difference, right?
What's that?
We can support that difference without issuing any bans, right?
Most of the time. So it depends, right? If we take on a lot of new debt for wastewater, and that debt is due on July 1. And that might be a problem for us. So that's something I'm going to work on with Cam, our treasurer, developing a cash flow for him to generate.
But you've got some cash flow from the two vendors so far, but I look at it and it's Greek to me. I don't know how it landed with you.
What's that?
The cash flows that EPG, I keep calling it EPG and GHD have submitted are just, to me, I don't get it.
Well, that's cash flow for the wastewater project. I'm talking about cash flow of the general fund. You know, we got to pay salaries every other week. We got every other week a vendor warrant. We pay our vendors. Like I said, we pay our full $2.5 million pension assessment up front to get a 2% discount. So we got some big bills, and we got to pay our regional school district assessments at the beginning, you know, each quarter at the beginning of the quarter. So we got some big bills that we got to pay out. All things being equal, we've got a balanced budget every year. So we have the amount of revenue coming in to pay the amount of bills we're anticipating having to pay. But the timing is important, right? So if you're paying, 20% of your bills in July,
You have to have the
you
money.
got to have some cash, some working capital. So, luckily we've generate surpluses each year, which becomes free cash. But in the meantime, that's a kind of our float for the beginning of the year.
Until the tax
which-
monies come in.
Till the tax monies come in.
But
So
if you look at those cash flows, those guys get versus draws downs from SRF.
Yeah.
And then have those.
That will impact-
normal one, right.
right.
Do
So-
the state really they're due on July 1st, the first day of the fiscal year?
Yeah.
Repay the loan?
Yeah.
That's not very nice. And they know we don't get the money.
Well, no, for the debt, we get to schedule it.
That's not very
So-
nice.
Before I got here, a lot of the debt had already been scheduled, and a lot of it was July 1st to July 15th. So anything I'm doing,
Fiscal year.
I'm putting it on a January schedule.
Write the check now.
But the problem with that is it requires a payment twice a year, 6 months apart. So if I pick January, the first one's usually the bigger one because it includes a principal payment. But that means you got an interest payment in July.
July 1. Yeah.
So, maybe a better thing here would be pick a September date and do a September and March. So, I got to look at that and when's all this stuff coming due. And so a little bit of an art to that scheduling. But more importantly to me is really this bottom section under the local receipts. How are we doing? And a couple things have me concerned. I mean, ultimately, the way we budget, I think we're in good shape to weather the storms if we have a storm. But a couple of things that I keep an eye on is the first line, motor vehicle excise, to me is always kind of a bellwether as to how things are doing. And you can see the prior 3 years, or prior 2 years anyway, upwards 120,000.
Mhm.
And now we're down to about 79,000. So I haven't looked at it yet, but some of that could be the timing of when bills get issued. So I got to go back and look, what was the timing? Typically, we're not seeing a lot of big bills being issued this time of year. The bigger bills will come out in February, March timeframe. But is it a bill timing issue or is it a bill value issue? So what I mean by bill value is all things being equal, you have the same number of residents with roughly the same number of cars each year. As you all know, if you've kept your car the first 3 years, that excise bill is pretty high. And then from years 4 through 6, it drops pretty quickly. So usually when you see declines here, and my experience has been in a bad economic environment, this can go down anywhere to 15 to 20%. And why is that? Because it's a bad economic environment. People aren't spending any extra money they have on buying a new car. They're holding on to the old car for years 5, 6, and 7 or 8. And therefore you see the decline in the motor vehicle excise because you're not getting excise based on year 1, 2, or 3 cars. So that's kind of a little bit of a bellwether. And then I also I thought was interesting is hotel motel excise of 197.5
Mhm.
versus 212, 245, and 269 of the 3 prior years. So we've seen a steady decline on that. But right below that, an increase in the short-term rental excise. So does that reflect people just not renting hotels and choosing Airbnb type things. Perhaps. And then tie that into the meals tax a couple of lines down. Also a decline,
Excuse me.
usually in the mid 60s, and we're, not too far off, but about 58, 59,000.
Mhm.
And again, a lot of this could be timing, but it's just interesting to watch that trend. And to me, what this signifies, and it's mostly anecdotal, just based on me seeing things over years, is that to me, this represents a slowing.
Mhm. Well, how much do you think is all of this is attributed because of the total economy that's going on? I mean, people aren't buying new cars, people are,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is I think
yeah,
people,
aren't traveling.
people are still taking vacations,
Yeah,
but
they're not
not
eating.
spending when they're, they want, people like their vacations and they want to do vacations, but they're going to save money where they can on the
Mhm.
eating out, and
Mhm.
restaurants are,
Yeah.
they have a tough road too, so they're not cheap now. And so a
Oh,
lot of
okay.
people are making the choice, I think, to
Mhm.
limit the eating out. And if you're renting an Airbnb with a kitchen, maybe you're buying
Mhm.
groceries and cooking at home.
Yep,
Mhm.
fixing food in-house, so to speak.
Right.
Mhm.
But there's some bright spots in this. The Wreck and Beach is holding strong. Not as high as it was 3 years ago, but in the ballpark of now a little bit higher than the prior couple of years. Solid waste fees, I want to keep an eye on that one. I'm not sure what that's attributed to. I suspect it might be attributed to commercial haulers and what they deliver or don't deliver. And some of that could be C&D debris. And so if you're seeing a slowdown in renovation and construction, you're gonna have less C&D and less volume at the transfer station. But that, of course, also should correlate to our expenses, because if we get more C&D, we've got more hauling and more disposal costs. So,
Rich, what is the school Medicaid? Is that going to be affected with everything that's going on?
not sure.
Hmm.
But that's billing for special education services, that certain services are allowed to be billed for Medicaid eligible students or families, and so the school does. But that's entirely run by the school.
I am a little surprised. I'm looking at the cannabis one. I think it's about 10 from the bottom, sort of in the middle.
Yeah.
Where you're showing not quite 35, and last year was 27, and I was thinking that things were slowing down.
Well, you certainly had
Yeah, but from
from
before.
well over 200.
Right, from 80 to 27.
That's promising that it's up. It's a small amount of money, but hopefully that means that the two shops that we have are
Mm.
at least holding their own. There's been a lot of competition
Mm.
and a lot of price pressure on those products. So.
Yeah, yeah.
Who invests your income?
Who invests our income? I mean, for interest, our treasurer. And that's kind of our saving grace at this point. If you see that line second from the bottom, 220,000.
Yeah, a
Now, a lot of
budget, a
that,
budget of 75.
a lot of that is a little bit of arbitrage with the $5.9 million of bond proceeds we got for wastewater planning. So that's why we're not overdoing it on that budget, because a lot of that this is probably the last year of that. Or no, we'll have a little bit more this year too. But it was very promising to see that went up. Because I don't think we had necessarily any more investable cash or proceeds. But I think that reflects that we certainly have been doing a better job in cash management. It's something I've been reinforcing with the previous and our current treasurer, is if we're going to have excess cash on hand, let's make sure we have it in the highest yielding interest bearing accounts. We don't put it at risk. It's still highly
Liquid.
collateralized and insured. But we're getting, instead of a 0.5% rate, we're getting a 3.5% or a 4% rate by making sure we're putting in the right accounts.
So then you think that'll continue through this year, the investment?
It's
income,
going to start
till the
dropping off because we're starting to
the
spend
wastewater.
quite a bit of money every year on the development of the the project and the SRF submittal, and then we'll be pretty heavy in another couple months because we'll have to start preparing bid documents and doing all that. And so that planning money is certainly getting used throughout. And that planning probably be largely done by the end of this year, this fiscal year. So
So has the state come through on the SRF loans as you anticipated?
well, we don't know that for sure yet. We submitted it on the due date, which was 2 or 3 weeks ago.
October 3rd, yeah.
So the submission's in and we got to hear back from them. Yeah, I'm sure, they usually, typically they'll have questions, ask us things and ask us to modify things and we will. So I don't think we have any concern that we won't get approved. It's just going through the process.
Right.
So at the moment, through September, we're short $3 million on our local receipts budget. But I don't have any overriding concern that won't come through, but you might recall a meeting in the spring or I guess in the summer. A lot of these receipts don't come in until, April, May, June. So, I always have a little anxiety associated with hitting the end of the year. It's like, all right, are we gonna have rainy days that, blow up our beach receipts or, but again, just another reason why we budget conservatively, as we'll get to in the financial policies. The goal here is to budget our local receipts approximating 80% of our prior year actuals. And so what that means practically for us is that if we budgeted at 80% of what we would get over the last 2 or 3 years, and we have a downturn of 10, 15, 20%, we should still make our revenue targets. And we might, have a lean couple of years that we're budgeting really tight. But at least we're starting in a position of strength where some towns are budgeting, they're maxing out their estimated receipts in their budget and budgeting 95. And I had one town that wanted me to do 99% of their prior year actuals. You have zero room for a downturn. So any degree of downturn reflects a cut, usually in those towns, a cut in services. Because they can't weather any downtown, so.
Rich, do you know, as you just mentioned, we are under budget by 3 million. Do you know what that figure was at this time last year?
Well, 25 budget was 5,726,000.
Right.
25 actual was 2,000,003. So Peter, you could probably do that math quickly. So 5,700,000 minus 2,300,000, whatever that is.
3-4.
3,000,004. So I guess we're better relative to last year.
Better. Three is better than 3-4.
Yeah.
Right. But again, a lot of this is timing, so.
So next year, given the fact that we've put the RTE in place, the bills should be going out sooner.
I hope so, yeah. I want to get back to, getting our tax rate certified in August by the state, which is, very early. Usually we're one of the top
Yeah.
5
Mhm.
towns, the earliest towns to get it approved. But if we can get it approved in August and we can get the bill out before Labor Day, that's a win for us. And I think people appreciate it, just to know. And if,
Mhm.
if you're local and you've been a local for a number of years, you go through the cycle of the seasonal cycle of you've got, that's when you got your money and you're gearing up to make it through the long winter, right? So it's better to get that bill sooner rather than later when you've got the money to do
Yep.
it,
Especially with the holidays coming.
right?
And people seem to like to send their payments in right away. But
Right.
judging by the way we got this money earlier in previous years.
Well, I think it's a combination of that's when, local folks that are sticking around have the money.
Yeah.
And it's also a reflection of a lot of people start heading out in the fall if they're snowbirds and they just want to take care of their business. And
Putting it up.
And then finally, after that page, I'm not going to go in much detail because it's very hard to judge any of this really. But I gave you many pages of our year-to-date budget report on our appropriations, on our budget, departmental budgets. And, again, some things are paid early, like the pension assessment. And so that's, at this point, probably 100% spent, even though we're only 3 months in. Other things are a bit seasonal, like recreational salaries. Is probably higher than 3/12 of the way through the budget because we've got seasonal staff for July and August, so he's spending seasonal money. But the regular year-round staff is, one is 3/12. So there's anomalies like that. So the key here is we have an accounting office that pays attention to this and department heads that pay attention to this and should be on top of monitoring their budgets. And that's something I think, maybe Tina and I will speak to next month. We, an area we would like to do probably a little bit better. That involves us, doing some training with the departments, department heads and the department admins that are processing the bills. Developing an expectation of where you are going to be in a certain year, depending on how you're spending your budget, which is why, how we do the budget's important. Because we do try to, it's almost like a zero-based budgeting exercise each year where you're documenting why you need what you need in each line. And if you know that, and that's how you're processing your bills, you ought to be keeping a mental note as a department head or as the department admin that's processing bills that here's why I need this budget and I've paid this bill and these are to come. Or, hey, I had this budgeted and we ended up saving money on that, or we ended up not needing that. So now that's savings that can cover anything else that's extra. So keeping that mental note and having those detailed budgets kind of all goes into being able to monitor this report, right? And where you are in your cycle of paying bills. So
the training would be to get them to pay more attention or to be more
Yeah, sync-
into this process.
pay more attention to this.
Yeah.
Make them more comfortable with our financial management system, because at this point, everybody, I think for the most part, has access. But do they actually take the time to look and spend time in the system? Because it's not the most comfortable things for non-financial people.
Right.
But then syncing that up with, hey, we had a budget process and I came to the finance committee and talked about my budget and went through the line items as to why we need it. Syncing that up with what you're seeing here, right? So that's just, it can happen. It takes time. And when you spend the time, then, somebody will retire and move on and you gotta do it again, right? So it just never ends. But that's kind of the thought process of, having the department admins, department heads, the town accounting office, and then me at a higher level, looking at these things on a regular basis to monitor these budgets to make sure we're not overspending. And the other part we do in here, and you see some of it, but not a lot yet, is when we know we have a cost, and it's going to be a big effort hopefully for next year, is to issue purchase orders to encumber your funds when you know that you have a cost that you're going to spend. And even before the beginning of the year. So, because these budgets get entered, after town meeting. So in June, before the next year even starts, we could put an effort out, say, hey, well, you got $100,000 in your expense budget, but we've got a taser lease and you got certain things that are going to happen, certain contracts. Well, let's encumber those. So out of your 100, and I'm just using make up numbers here, but if you got 100,000, but you got $70,000 of known costs that are going to be spent, you really only got 30,000 that's left. And so,
So are most of them coming to you for the PO when they get the bill from the vendor?
yeah, we're getting a little bit better where people are putting POs in sooner, but I'd like to get it not only be sooner, I'd like it to be before the year even starts. So that's kind of the next.
Well, a lot of companies won't recognize revenue unless they have a PO in hand anyway.
Right. So, but that's all work, and it's not like we have a huge administrative staff to do all that. So that's why these things don't just happen quickly. But that was a system I had set up in a previous town I worked in, and it took a couple of years, and everybody clamored about it for, a good 9 months. But once they got used to it, it was like, hey, well, this is the best thing since toast. Now they knew.
Now it's over. Yeah.
So that's it for me, Mary, unless anybody has any questions on.
What about debt service for the coming fiscal year? 26, 27. You expect that one to really be a big hike.
I have it scheduled out already, Roy, in the budget for 27, but I can't. I'm not sure where that's landing yet. I don't think we have. At this point, we don't have a lot of new debt. Because that will be a whole nother year yet
Yeah.
before we get through the SRF. So the answer is it's pretty level, I think. I guess at the moment.
So is this a new Power Munis, that this software package, or is it the same one that we've been using for a while?
Same one we've been using, yeah.
They just haven't been using it like you want them to?
Oh, we're getting better all the time, so yeah.
But I mean, I guess.
You're gonna ask how long it's gonna take?
Well, no, I sense it from what you said, that it's a process of getting people to use it on
Yeah.
a regular basis, to plan.
Yeah.
I guess would be a best word.
Mm-mm.
Well, we've made a lot. Tina's in the accounting office has done a great job.
No, I
Automating-
live it, but the
automating
department
it.
heads are another.
Right, no, so, the accounting office had to put a lot of stuff in place for them so that then they could go out and then teach the department heads and the admins and then, implementing automation on their end. So we've made big strides over the last 3 years. We've gotten a lot of extra training on Munis and a lot of the functionality of it. And so I think, we have an advertisement out now for a, assistant town accountant. And we've got some good candidates, and we're hopeful that that person will have some time and ability to go out and really supercharge our efforts to get the departments to do things in a more
Precise?
prescribed manner. But that is because that's the biggest effort in an accounting office in any town is the bill AP processing. So the more we can tighten that up and streamline it, the better for everybody. And that frees up the time for your accounting staff to do actual accounting and an analysis instead of just constantly processing bills, which is just a tough grind to be in. So we got a little bit of plan on how to hopefully improve that, and maybe Tina can speak to that next
Is it a
month.
new position, the assistant?
No.
No, but if you get that PO process going, they shouldn't be surprises. People should.
Yeah.
know it's coming, right?
No, it's great that way. The downside is it's more administrative work to manage POs now. Because, never happens that,
But does this software package allow that management?
yes.
Okay.
But, for example, you think this is gonna cost you $10,000. Well, now it costs you $10,112. So now someone's gotta go in and adjust the PO to that, and then you gotta close it out. Or maybe you had savings on the PO, so, thought it was 10, it's only 9, so now you got $1,000. Somebody's gotta identify that we no longer need that, then you gotta close it. So it's, it's a little bit of labor intensive. It just doesn't happen, right? And so you gotta weigh the
The anticipation of the
Right.
expense versus the.
effort it takes to manage all this stuff, so.
Has our free cash from 24, 25 been certified by the Department of Revenue?
No, that's what we're hoping for the accounting visit next month. So those reports have been submitted. And last I think we heard, we were like, in a queue, we're 4th or 5th to be done. But right now, up through the holidays, the priority of the Department of Revenue is certifying tax rates for the 351 cities and towns. Again, that's another reason we like to be early, because we don't want to be waiting on them. But I would say vast majority of towns and cities might not even be at this point, might not even have their stuff in for their tax rate. They probably, DOR over the last several years has been really pushing to get them in earlier and earlier. But I would say November into December is where the vast majority of the tax rates. So if we can get our tax rate in early and then we get our financial reports in early, we can hopefully avoid that rush. And like I said, we're in the queue. We're 4 or 5 or so in the queue for our free cash. So hopefully we can get that in the next week or two before the big crush for getting the rest of the state's tax rate.
Everybody else,
Because once you hit that busy point of November, December on tax rates, they won't get to our free cash till January. They just put everything on the shelf. So it's a staffing issue for the Department of Revenue too. So if they got somebody out on maternity leave, which our rep had been in previously, then they got their supervisor covering and they're short-staffed and they can't do all these things, so. No, timing's important. And we try to make it as easy as possible for them too, so, usually we have pretty clean reports that we submit. They always have questions, but not too many questions for us, and we have good relationship with us. They know us, have experience with us, so if Tina tells them something or I tell them something, they believe what we're
They
saying.
believe you.
Right.
Are there any other questions, comments under the 9/30/25 budget?
Mayor, I did want to just follow up on one thing on, I guess I should have done under departmental updates. Just an example. And again, not that we're always 100% perfect, but it's just we do a pretty good job. So I want to emphasize good examples of this. We saw Cam last month, the treasurer, and he talked
At our last meeting.
and he talked about some of the internal controls that we have, particularly cash receivables and withholding account reconciliations to our ledger. Now we got to get up to speed a little bit on where we normally like to be, but we always have a plan, and I'm always pushing people to make sure we're sticking to that plan and that we're as consistent and routine as possible. And so evidence of why that's important, if you went online and were to Google City of Holyoke is going to have, and they get a massive amount of state aid. States withholding their state aid because they haven't done basic cash reconciliations for several years now. And they finally have had it. And they're now withholding state aid, and they're probably going to go in and require them and force them to hire, either figure out a plan of how you're going to get to this done in the 60 days, or we're going to force you to hire someone to do it for you. And you're going to have to pay that. And pay them.
And the town would have to pay for it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, if they withhold out our state aid, who cares? It's so little at this point.
Yeah, right.
Well, I mean, maybe the school aid wouldn't be,
Yeah,
wouldn't be little, but for a town like that,
that's big.
I don't know what their percentage is, but they have a big percentage of the budget.
Yeah.
The budget receipts is state aid. So bad things can happen, by not doing it. Never mind the lack of internal control you have if you're not doing it. So,
Right.
but that's what we're trying to avoid. So,
I just ask you a technical question with respect to debt service. Exempt debt service, what defines exempt debt service?
the vote by town meeting and at the ballot. It has to be approved by town meeting and at the ballot box, which means that I'll just make up a number here. If we have $1 million of exempt debt service and we're allowed to raise $38 million of property tax levy, we can raise the 38 million and then add $1 million to it to make it 39 million to pay for that $1 million of debt service. Whereas if it's not exempt, if your levy limit's 38 million and you got $1 million of non-exempt debt service, you got to fit that $1 million of debt service within that 38.
Right. So when we issue bonds to close out the water project, that will be exempt then?
Yes.
Same thing with the town landings?
Not sure about the town landings. It depends on how much we get for grant funding. But typically we don't have any extra levy capacity really, so generally speaking, any debt we issue, if the town wants that project to occur,
Yep.
it would be, starting point is probably going to be exempt unless I can figure out another way to fund it or pay for it.
Right. And is that the same with Route 6 improvements?
Yes.
Yep.
But we're pursuing, and this is probably a multi-year process.
Yeah.
To get that on the state transportation improvement program. It's called TIP program. And if we can get it on the TIP program, the state will pay. We will have to come up with a piece for some design money. So again, we start with, if we want this project to happen, it's probably has to be exempt unless we can find a funding source that will, take care of it otherwise.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions from the committee?
Thank you.
Thank you, Rich.
That's a good report. Thank you.
I'm looking at the agenda and I'm on to number 6, wastewater infrastructure investment fund WIF, which is normally called WIF, been called WIF, WIIF. And did everybody get I mean, I have it because of prior meetings, but
It's
I
this
didn't know whether
paper.
everybody else had received the
Yeah.
the worksheet. So essentially what this is about is the Community Preservation Committee has in place a 3% surcharge, which you've probably seen on your tax bills. And what we're talking about is using 1.5% of that 3%, which at the moment accounts for about $600,000 to help pay for the wastewater treatment. And which would reduce, obviously, the amount of money that comes in from the 3% surcharge to about half of what we're receiving right now. It has been discussed at the Community Preservation Committee. It's been discussed at the Select Board. And so before I go into any other comments, I'm going to just open it up for people who would like to ask questions about it. The worksheet that Rich put together shows the ramifications and the CPA committee and the fund receives matching funds on the monies that we receive from the 3% surcharge. And if we were to reduce the 3% surcharge for the CPA projects, to use half of that, essentially half of that for the wastewater, we would be obviously reducing the amount of money that we would also be receiving from the matching funds, because we would only have half of what we're currently having. So before I go any further, I'm going to ask if there are any questions or if
What's the source of the matching funds?
it's from the Registry of Deeds. Any business that is conducted through the Registry of Deeds is people pay for the service, and
Right.
those monies come to the state, any county or town that has approved putting into place the community preservation project, the 3% surcharge.
Thank you.
I'll give a quick walkthrough. And I should also say, Mary, this is the ultimate resolution of this is at town meeting, which will decide. So it'll be an article proposed when the select board opens the warrant. We'll have an article, 2 articles. One, and I'm not sure what the order we want to do it yet, but one article will be to reduce the CPA surcharge from 3% to, for sake of argument, let's say 1.5%. And the second article will be to adopt the legislation of the WIF fund and impose a 1.5% surcharge for WIF. So really, it's a reprioritization. I guess how I would characterize it or think of it.
Without a tax increase.
Without increasing. So, we've got this funding source of 3%, and it was important for us to have for open space and recreation and historical purposes and housing, perhaps. And that they're not important anymore, but we also have a new priority. We got a 4th thing or a 5th thing. So is on the table right now, with those other things are things that might be happening in the future. But we know wastewater is. And so when I contemplated the wastewater financing plan, I had put in my projections. You might recall I told town meeting in the most likely, or not necessarily the worst case, but close to the worst case, a conservative estimate of $1,000 of property tax impact.
Right.
Mhm.
That was contingent upon $600,000 of money coming out of the WIF fund. So right now, and of that $1,000, I think it was $500 of that 1,000 was attributed to debt service. So right now, we're, we're still pretty feeling good about the 0%. So we're ahead of schedule we're better than $500 at the moment, but we still got a ways to go to see what that ends up being. But again, that $500 of debt service was contingent on getting $600,000 of funding from the WIF. So that was kind of the overall plan. So as Mary indicated, there's a little schedule showing 2025 is the first column. 2026 is a bit of an estimate, but pretty solid because we know what things are going to be, more or less, for 26. And you can see for 26, we're getting about $1.146 million and 3% CPA surcharge. We expect that to generate, you have to go down, there's 3 different rounds. So I kind of had to estimate what I think those 3 rounds might look like. But the total is about $240,000 of state match for a total of $1,386,000 of CPA revenue. So if we were to vote to reduce CPA to 1.5%, that's the 2027 column. You can see instead of 1.146, we get about $650,000, about half, right? We're still going to get a match because the match is contingent on the prior year. So we don't lose all our match in FY27. We still get, but we're only going to get it at the at the 1.5, not at the 3. So we get it instead of 240, we get 136 for a total of $786,000 of CPA revenue. And then on the blue line, you can see, but we are generating just about $650,000 of revenue to the WIF. And then in 28, you see a bigger drop off because we now lose some of the match, the second and third round matches. So you see 28, about 670, I think that says. And a total match of 106 for a total of 775 to the CPA and 668 to the WIF. And then it goes on for a few years.
No state match on the WIF.
No.
How many years, one of the questions that has been asked, how many years do you feel that if this was put into place, you would need that 1.5%?
Well, that's a good question. Hold that for a second, because I just
Okay.
want to point out one other thing before we get to that question. Because you had mentioned this, Mary. Starting in 27, though, below the blue and the green line, that's revenue that's being foregone.
Mhm.
So by doing this, we're foregoing 103,000 in 27, 140 just about in 28. And that's money that we're anticipating we would otherwise get in state match that would go into CPA. So we're diverting or reprioritizing $650,000+ for debt service, but we're foregoing, free money, so to speak, from the state. Now,
It can only be used for CPA purposes.
can only be used
though.
for CPA purposes. Now, the other important thing to know in this, and this is kind of a bit of a curveball, and we'll see what actually ends up happening, hopefully in about a month or so. This was all premised on current, when I did this, year and a half, 2 years ago, CPA has a restriction that you can only use CPA money for housing, which is probably our next big priority that people think about. Is only for income eligible projects, tenants, residents, at 100% of AMI.
AMI.
Maximum, yeah.
The new regulations coming out for seasonal communities rules and regs is potentially changing that to allow people up to, I think it's gonna be 250.
200.
It's either 200 or 250,
Oh, I've heard 200. I didn't hear 250.
which is
I just
a
heard
big
the
difference, because
250.
now it's not just
Carolyn said they might
low
change
income
it.
housing.
250? Oh.
Not that you should consider 100% of AMI low income, that should be, hopefully middle class, but it's not nowadays.
Not
But-
for housing.
But 200% is now, what we'd consider workforce housing territory, right? And for a family of four, I just went through some of this today with the housing coordinator. I think it was a family of four approximated, 100% AMI for a family of four was about 105,000, I think. So 200,000, 200% AMI would be 210,000. So we probably have, a lot of working families that make upwards of that amount of money if you're both working. And now those people would be eligible for CPA funded housing programs. So that does change the calculation a bit, right?
Mhm.
Because I think, we're getting into talking about redevelopment of Tea Time and Town Center Plaza at some point in the relative near future. And a big part of that probably is workforce housing.
Mhm.
And now CPA could be a funding source for that,
Mhm.
whereas before it couldn't.
And I want to just add that last year when the 5-year plan was, CPA plan was updated, the requirements under the CPA require that under the categories that you can use your monies for, you have to use 10%. And you have an option of the rest of the monies, how you use it, undesignated. And last year, when we put together the 5-year plan, we changed the 10% for the housing to 30%. So all the other categories, there are 4 categories for us, are 10%, but 30% was put in for housing, so that 30% of the monies were to go to housing because of the situation that we've got in town. But obviously, if we were to proceed with this, 30% of the total versus 30% of half, you're cutting the amount of monies that you've got available for housing in half.
Right.
But to your point about timing, if the real need for housing, if you're doing tea time in town center, is really gonna be after we get the sewer in, and so maybe we don't, and so then we'll have operational income to cover the gap. And so we'll still have the debt and probably more of it.
It does bother me a little bit that we forego, free money from the state, right?
Right.
So that's bothersome, especially now that we have a higher capability of using it for housing programs that we probably want to target. But I think you're right, Fred, and that's probably that's where I keep coming back to priority and timing. There's no doubt we're gonna need some housing money, but it's probably not gonna be
Not
until we get through implementation of wastewater.
We can switch it back.
And so that's,
we every year at town meeting, we can switch it, the percentage.
so that's kind of where I am. And so if you were to look at that blue column, because I started at 1.5% because 2 years ago when I started that, 1.5% equated to 600,000. But as you can see, 1.5% in 27 is about 650. And then in 5 years, it's 788 because the 1.5% of a growing tax levy is a bigger number. So a few things. Maybe it doesn't need to be 1.5%, and we don't really necessarily need to start in 27. But let's assume we did. Maybe I don't know what the number is, but maybe it's 1.1% or 1.2%, whatever the fraction of that gets us $600,000. And then that, start at probably something just a little under 600,000, so that in year 2, when we do need it, we're at 600, and that funds the plan that we presented to town meeting in the community. And then in 5 years from now, to the extent it's more than $600,000, okay, say, well, it's no longer a 2 and 1% split. Now we can do a 2.4 and 1 point, whatever that's. I'm not that
Yeah.
points. We can adjust it.
An unusual percentage.
Right. When I was in Yarmouth, they went for a point. I think it was a 0.52. So
0.52.
they made me go and calculate specifics, but
Yeah.
okay.
How's Orleans funding all that housing down by the car wash?
That's all private.
Private developer.
I think it's, yeah.
So I have a couple of comments. If we were to approve the 600,000, in order to not end up having years where we end up with more than 600, as far as if under the 1.5%, we just use a percent that we put in place at the beginning to provide the 600, and then keep it at that.
I wouldn't want to change it every year, but
Yeah, no,
I think if we approve this, I think it's certainly reasonable for us to say, internally that we should look at this in 5 years.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
in 5 years, our system will be built and in operation, and we'll, know exactly what we're dealing with.
And housing doesn't come the next day either.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it's a planning
No.
process
Yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah.
Housing.
Especially now.
Just to, to me, that, I hate leaving the money on the table. So even though we might not need the money, if the state wants to give us, 140, 150 grand a year, and we can bank that,
Mhm.
I'm trying
But
to.
that's
But
unfortunate.
The impact on the taxpayer of using this money.
By using this money, but you're already, taxpayers are already paying the 3%.
Right, but
if-
just
if you weren't-
redistribute it.
No, but I'm just saying, if you weren't to use this money for the wastewater, we still have to have get the 600,000 from someplace else.
Right.
And the taxpayers are gonna have to pay that if they're not paying
Okay.
from it from this. Yeah. And from my perspective, we need to have wastewater, and you've mentioned this and you were talking about it. We need to have the wastewater in order to have the housing. I mean, we can't put the housing in at tea time at Town Center Plaza until we have the wastewater.
You're gonna.
Yeah, yeah.
And I should have said, I meant to say when I was talking about the articles for town meeting, so the select board would put those on the warrant when it opens. And when they do that, they already told me they'll be looking for finance committee's recommendation, the
right.
CPC's recommendation.
Yeah, yeah.
And any other public input, but, so I don't want to take a vote tonight or anything, but
Yeah.
I just wanted to present it, and then at some point I'll come back to this committee and to the CPC and kind of work with them as to how do they want to proceed or not. And the select board will take that under
Mhm.
consideration. And then, of course, when the articles come out, everybody will have their recommendation for the article, and then town meeting will decide, but.
Mhm.
And, there are alternatives to this. Just don't want to make it an incomplete discussion. I mean, the whole point here is to reprioritize without increasing taxes, right?
Right.
So that's why we're leaving it at 3%. Some towns have made the decision to go beyond the 3%. So there's nothing that says you can't do a 2% CPA and a 2% WIF, but you've added a percent
Mm,
surcharge to
mm,
your
mm.
taxpayers. And that's what we're trying not to do. But
I think it's a good idea.
Mhm.
Do you know, is it, I'm trying to remember the CPA law, but the only way you can get the second and third round matches is to be at full 3.
Yeah.
There's no incentive to be at 2 rather than 1.5
No.
or anything less than 3.
right.
Good question.
Yeah, it's a great question. Threshold is
But
3.
what's happened, I mean, back in the day when we started, so the new current version of the CPA law, I may have this off a year or so, but it was the year 2000 or 2001. And it had a 20-year time horizon. So
For the
that
Cape-
expired, and it's the old Cape Cod land based
Cape
communities
Cod.
that adopted CPA.
Mhm.
And so that expired, I think it was 2021.
Right.
So after 2021, you have the ability now to adjust the rate.
Right.
But you were probably around back then, Peter.
Most.
Back in those days, the match was a lot more. And the match,
Oh,
you're getting a 50% match.
Start at 100%?
Yeah.
First year was.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first year meant
That's what I thought.
only a few towns were
We've been
involved.
talking about it now,
And,
but
and
we're-
every
Yeah.
year, more and more towns get involved, and
Jump
as the
on.
more towns get involved, the more
It dilutes the share pools.
sharing of the monies, yeah.
Now we're down to 15% and a few bucks on the second and third distribution. So
But to your point, I guess you pretty much said this, but we could keep the CPA surcharge at 3%, get the full state match. And if the taxpayers wanted, they could put in a 1.5 or a 1.2%, whatever, with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And keep the
Keep
state money.
this, yes, yeah,
And keep
yeah,
the
yeah,
state
yeah.
monies.
final-
And
They probably, I mean. I'm not
final part of-
suggesting that.
the final part of all this is on the flip side. I went back the last 5 years and looked at what did the CPA committee actually approve for projects. So this excludes any reservations for usually the housing trust. I took those out. The long and the short of it is, over the 5 years, they had about $4.2 million of projects. It's the bottom right number
mhm,
that were funded through the various categories. And if you were to look at I didn't tally it up, but the next 5 years of CPA money, from 27 through 32 or 28 through 32, it's about $4.2 million. So even at 1.5%, we could have done all the projects that we did the
Good.
prior 5 years. So,
Yeah.
I don't know if that,
It may be wrong.
and we did some pretty big projects in the prior 5 years. We
Yeah,
did
yeah.
the lighthouse restoration, the schoolhouse museum,
Village Green.
Yeah, and
Village Green.
almost $1 million of that is still sitting in the Affordable Housing Trust.
Yeah.
So really only.
Well, I took
three
the,
th- $3
but that was a
million.
I took that out of the project total. I took
Oh, okay,
reservation.
you did. Yeah, I see. Okay, yeah.
And I'd like to just
School and this.
piggyback on what you just said, Peter, because as Rich said, the select board is interested in our thoughts on this project. And I would like to recommend that we have a member or more than one member from the Affordable Housing Trust come to one of our meetings to talk about their view on reducing the monies, because as I said earlier, the majority of our monies go for housing. And so I think we should get a better understanding of exactly how much money they have, because we've been giving them money for quite a while now. And I'd like to hear their side of the discussion.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Is it 1.4 million? Is that what you said it was? Is that
Yes.
how much money they have now?
I don't know.
I don't have but I
was
think what Rich is
900.
talking about is the undesignated under housing for
Yeah, I should've-
EPA.
I can send it out, but
Yeah.
we have unspent money within the CPA. We had money reserved for housing in the CPA
Yeah, right,
fund.
right, right.
We have money reserved for housing within the housing trust.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
can get you that.
So the CPA has undesignated monies for housing and monies that were given by CPA to the Affordable Housing Trust. And that's their money. And I think we should.
Those two numbers are.
No,
Well,
I'll get them to you.
Well, I think I have the amount that's right now for the undesignated housing.
But the argument's gonna be, so valid argument, I'm not trying to discredit it, but,
Mm.
and Carolyn is, from the Housing Trust, is the big proponent of this, and, it's
Yeah.
not that I disagree with her, but, it's, I
Right
guess the
now,
perspective is that
excuse me.
you can't do everything, right? So, but their argument would be, we've got big housing needs, and whatever the number ends, let's, for sake of argument, say between the Housing Trust and CPA, we've got $3 or $4 million. That's a good sum of money, but in today's environment, when it costs,
Mm.
$750,000 per unit to develop a unit of housing, we're gonna need many millions of dollars to subsidize the projects that we're contemplating. And, I don't know what that is yet, but it's more than what we've got. And so why would you leave 150 grand on the table, right?
I can tell you that right now, as of, at the end of August, the undesignated for affordable housing is $757,000. And that has nothing to do, as we said, and I said earlier, monies that the Affordable Housing Trust have. Either the monies that they have received from other places and monies that they've received from us in the past, from CPA in the past.
Who invests that money?
Our treasurer.
Your treasurer?
Does that 700 include the reserve? The housing reserve?
I'm not sure what, yes, it does. The 400 that was given a while back.
Well, the 10%.
No, it's not. It's whatever.
The 10 and the
Right.
30 that you put in. that
Yeah,
went
right.
last year.
Yeah.
So Mary, you're proposing that Carolyn come and. talk
I'm proposing that I ask the Affordable Housing Trust to present, to come to one of our meetings to discuss what their plans are for the monies they have, how much monies they do have,
Mhm.
and what their opinion is of this CPA surcharge change.
So that would need to be sooner than later.
It would probably be, if we could have at the next meeting.
Yeah. So if we've got people coming from Rich's office as well,
Mhm.
maybe December, or maybe we can.
Well,
call
we'll see,
special-
we'll try to figure it out when people can come on.
Yeah. Because in
different-
January, if we're doing what we usually do, we're gonna start meeting. Weekly.
Weekly.
Yeah, so there's more.
Weekly.
Now we gotta wrap
So-
up all our,
I'm sorry?
planning discussions by December, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, and as I said, the select board is interested.
January.
Yeah, The
Go
select board is
forward.
interested in our opinion. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah, so that's important.
Yeah, yeah,
Goody.
okay. Are there any other comments, questions, thoughts?
I'm just curious, have you received applications yet, CPA?
Not yet.
And when do those?
We have
I
our,
know-
we have another meeting next week. What was it, next week? The first week, first Wednesday of, that's not next week, it's the following week, yeah. Okay. See, ask a Affordable Housing Trust.
Financial policies, okay.
All righty, I'm looking at the agenda. Financial policies, number 7 of the agenda.
Yeah, did I distributed this last time, didn't I?
Yep, right.
Yes,
Yeah,
right.
so you got it again.
yep.
The big thing for me was to get an investment policy in here, but I just haven't had a chance to get to that. So that'll be forthcoming at some date. Because I've been working on with the select board to adopt a more formal policy for our overarching Eastham Community Fund. And I'd like to talk to the library, Mary, about they might want to do with some of their funds, with the idea that we consolidate all these funds, kind of what you've been alluding to all night, Roy, of giving our treasurer some guidance as to beyond cash investments, something that's a little longer term. So, coming up with what do we do with cash reserves versus short-term reserve versus midterm versus long-term assets, and then investing them appropriately for each of those scenarios. So library's got some long-term money. The Timothy Smith Fund is some long-term money. It's kind of lost its purchasing power over the years because it hasn't been invested. I've been talking to the select board about, this is my crazy idea of within the Eastham Community Fund, starting almost like an Eastham Community Fund endowment fund with an ambitious goal of $1 million that's not used for principal, but generates income that can go to seed the other Eastham community funds. So that'd be a fundraising effort. But I don't want to do that if we could just sitting on the money in a checking account, So I want to have some investment policies established to guide that process. Likely hire an outside investment management firm to do that and administer funds within the guidelines of our policy. So I want the finance committee to see that investment policy and then provide a recommendation to the select board to include it in here. And then also, if you could think about, I don't think I want a whole separate investment committee. Because I don't think it's needed and it's a bit much, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't have one of sorts. By law, the treasurer's charged with investing funds, but I want the treasurer to have support and some guidelines and some monitoring. Our outside advisor would do the monitoring, but also I don't think might be appropriate is if a member or two of the finance committee wanted to be on like a investment subcommittee. I think that would be appropriate as opposed to a full separate committee. And that would probably be, 3, maybe 4 times a year tops. Once we get something implemented, to meet with the outside advisor and the treasurer and myself to make sure that we're doing things that we're supposed to be doing in accordance with our investment policy.
So quarterly.
So that's really what I want to do on the financial management policies, but I also want, I always like to get this out before we hit the budget season. So when we get to, what happens commonly in a lot of other communities, I've had to deal with these, I get calls from time to time. Somebody, especially somebody new on the finance committee has an idea how things ought to be. This is great. But it's not the time to bring it up in the middle of the budget season, So this is the time to bring things up. If things aren't being done the way they ought to be, this is everyone's opportunity to say, let's get something in writing as to how we're doing things. And then we'd work them into the investment policy and get the select board on board and get everybody on board. And it also gives me a little, that gives me my marching orders too. So if you tell me that you want to budget local receipts at 99% of your prior year actual, that's what I'll do if that's what you want to put in the policy. But
Okay.
But that's not what it says. Right now it says between 80 and 85%.
Right.
So salaries for the finance committee could be.
Fine.
There we go.
The other key thing in here, which I think you all know, but in our budget policies, we're only using on our operating budget, recurring revenues to fund recurring expenses. And so that's a core thing.
Rich, who is on the community committee, I guess you,
Community fund,
yeah.
nobody. We got, so the East Ham Community Funds is kind of an arcane concept that I came in just to consolidate different funds within it, to give the select board some way to manage. Because we do get requests from time to time, people want to contribute money for different reasons.
Mhm.
And historically what happens, which is what happens in most towns, is you get these, 30, 40, 50, if you're a big town, 100 plus funds of $5,000 and $10,000 because somebody wanted to leave money for a scholarship program that doesn't even work anymore because it's only $5,000. I mean, so chances are, if somebody wants to leave a few $1,000 for a scholarship fund, we're not going to want to accept that contribution as a standalone fund, but by all means, give it to the Timothy Smith Fund or, whatever other fund we've designated. So it's a way to kind of control that and consolidate that and centralize it so we have a lump sum of money that we could give to an investment manager to manage appropriately. Because your $5,000 isn't going to seed a long-term scholarship program. But if we added it to the Timothy Smith Fund or something else that has some money that is not going to be using principal and generating income, then that's a great thing. So, so the East Ham Community Fund it's the select board, a tool of the select board, and they adopted some guidelines. And the next evolution of that is I'm going to ask them, I have some suggestions for them for some individual funds. So the Taxpayer Assistance Fund is the first fund of the East Ham Community Fund.
Mhm.
And probably the, what we currently call the Taxation Aid Fund, which is for people over 60. That will be a part. And then I just saw an article in the paper today, the Chronicle, about Brewster. This is another idea we had. They have a Helping Neighbors Fund.
Mm.
Brewster's had it for 5 years now and it's been successful. So that's something that we could do. And that's because we do have money in an old article that from time to time, somebody needs some amount of money because their electricity is going to get shut off or some urgent need. And usually what we do is we direct them to HPC or some other nonprofit, social service nonprofit, but they know that they can call us back for some funding to help them out on an emergency basis. And we've had a small amount of money for that, but that money is going to run out.
Mhm.
So I'd like to establish that as an ongoing program of the East Ham Community Fund. And then, of course, the overriding endowment fund that can be used and preserved to generate income to seed all these programs. So basically, human service, community service type programs that we don't want to have as part of the operating budget, but are important for us to be able, that somebody should be able to administer some funds to help the community.
It's great.
Do any other towns have endowment funds that you know of?
No, I'm
It's,
not,
it's allowed though, under law,
it's allowed,
obviously.
yeah.
It's a great idea, but I wonder if anybody's pulled it off yet.
No, because they don't have the
Wanna ask-
persistence. So you need some, need some continuity and leadership in your staffing, and you need persistence. And you need to be made a priority. Some towns, not gonna mention any names, have quite a bit of money in trust, what's called the old way we used to do things, called them trust funds. And they do a lousy job of managing them. And then, they lose their purchasing power and their value over time.
Right.
So that's what I'm trying to avoid by properly investing long-term assets appropriately. And that's why I'm trying to formalize it too, by having it be, if the East Ham Community Fund as an overarching program of the select board, hopefully they're staying on top of it on a, periodic basis. And that forces the staff to be on top of it too.
It's a good thing.
The town tax exempt in terms of
Yep.
that for those funds make income. they don't
And
have
so
to pay
part of what I
tax.
had to do is I worked with Eric on the admin's office. We've got a tracking sheet in addition to what goes into Munis. We've got a separate tracking sheet. So Paul, hopefully you got an acknowledgement letter
I did.
that beats the IRS requirements, because if you give over a certain amount, you have to acknowledge that no goods or services were received. So now we got a system for getting those out, making sure that donations are properly acknowledged. So now we're ready to go to actually move forward with this stuff.
Do you know how much money is in the community fund right now? Do you know?
50,000 plus 2,000 plus 250 plus 200. So 5,200 and
Mhm.
52, 450, plus whatever interest we got on there. But once I get this all established, it's gonna be a marketing and outreach effort.
Mhm.
And so,
Right, and I still think it's a good idea with the tax bills, if we can.
Mm,
Yeah,
put-
I
put
agree.
A little
Put a
note.
note.
That's what I did. I just took my rebate and
Mhm.
said, here.
Mhm, mhm,
The pink slip, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
the pink slip, yeah,
Still sitting on my desk.
yeah. I think the Eastham part-time residents gave 2,000. That was probably the first amount of money that we received.
Yep.
Yeah.
The 50
Okay.
came from town meeting, right? Yeah.
What was that, Peter?
The 50 came from town meeting.
Right, right.
and we do also have, so that's the resident taxpayer assistance program, people under 60.
Right.
Then we got it's existed for a couple years now. It's, I don't know, 8 or 9,000, I think, in the
Over
Um,
60.
taxation aid committee fund, which
Mm.
is the over 60. So I think we're meeting with them trying to get a meeting with them next week. We need some new members, but I think we have enough to have a meeting, and we want to revise a little bit of their rules, so that kind of fits a little bit better with what we have on the resident taxpayer assistance fund. So it's a continuation of that, 60 and under is this one, over 60 is this one. And people can contribute to either one if they want.
So what's the correct title for, is it the Taxation Assistance Fund?
Taxation aid, I think is
So
the
the
name of it.
taxation aid is over 60, and the resident taxpayer assistance fund is under 60. It does get a little confusing, and maybe at some point,
Yeah, put everything.
there's a way to
together.
kind of put it together, but one's provided by law, and the other we had to create through special legislation, so they're not the same laws, so.
And taxation aid does have volunteers that sit on that board because
Yes.
it's what the search committee recruits for, but the other one, the under 60
Is the select board.
is the select board.
And I don't know, long term, for now, they were willing to participate in it because, it's a new thing and they probably ought to see how it works out, but in a year or two, maybe that's just something we can add to the charge of the group,
Right.
the existing group. So at least you don't have the same group now, right?
They might want to meet together.
So
Okay.
sorry, we kind of got off track on the
No, no,
financial
no.
management.
It's all
really interesting.
But if anybody has any changes that they
worthwhile. It's
think
all
ought to be in here,
worthwhile.
then let me know and then I'll work on it.
No, I'm interested, number one, because it's interesting, but number two, as you mentioned, the library has an assortment of funds.
Right.
I think we could be utilizing in a better way than we're utilizing them right now.
And you also have several gift funds that are kind of spread out across our ledger in different funds, small amounts, a few $1,000s here and there.
Mm.
And if they're all gifts and we no longer know and I don't think they have restrictions on them, were left in the name of somebody. No reason we can't consolidate them.
Yeah, right.
Like a memorial type
Yeah,
fund.
right.
So what do you do with designated gifts? If someone leaves the town, $100,000 to be used only for pond protection, how would you treat that then?
Well, we have to honor,
Have to
any
under
restrictions
their-
that,
Right,
we don't have to accept a contribution. So
Right.
that's so if the restriction's so onerous or something that's not in our public interest, in community
Right.
interest, then we'd just say, no, thank you.
okay,
But if we say, yeah, we would appreciate that, and that is gonna be helpful,
right.
then we'd honor whatever restriction it came with. And we'd have to set up a fund to track that restriction.
Yeah, the designated gifts in smaller nonprofits can be more onerous than they are.
Well, that's
Oh,
part of the reason of having an East Hand Community Fund,
Right.
So if somebody says, I'd like to leave money for a scholarship program, but it's really not enough to justify it,
Right.
we could say, thank you very much. We would love to accept your contribution, but we've got this established scholarship program called the Timothy Smith Fund.
Mhm.
Let's put it in there because we don't have,
You don't want to say no.
we don't want to have 50 different,
Right.
you know,
Different
Right.
funds.
but this is getting into the world of community foundations, and we have the Community Foundation of Cape Cod does a lot of this type of stuff. But they charge a fee, and there's no reason we can't do it. And I think it's a source of can be a source of community pride for us. So I'm kind of hopeful that's what it ends up being.
The Cape Cod Foundation, that one?
Yeah.
Cape Cod Foundation.
Charge a fee to the
Yeah, I
towns?
think anybody that set up a donor advised
Oh,
fund
a fund under their
under
umbrella.
their umbrella, yeah. So they charge a fee, admin fee for themselves, and then or their investment managers are charges whatever fee they charge too. But it's that model really.
Okay, folks, any other comments, questions on item number 7, financial policies? I'm going on to item number 8, new business, and the only thing I have under there, unless somebody else has something, is that as we do every year, it's required for all of the committees to put together a town annual report, and Paul has been terrific at doing it in the past. And I sent him the information that we received from the town clerk's office.
Right. So
Yeah.
Mary, if it's okay with you, just to save people time, I will do it over the weekend. And I will send it to everybody and we do it, everybody here was here last year. If we do it, we did last year, just send me your comments. I will create 2 versions, one red line with everybody's comments, so you can see what changed from what I sent out. And then I'll send out a clean version, which will have all the red line accepted, and then we can talk about it next meeting as opposed to spending all our time saying, should it be a comma here? Or
Yeah.
so,
And the other piece of it is if people can just send it
yeah, just yeah,
privately,
just-
don't hit reply
Yeah,
all.
don't
Yeah.
reply all,
So,
everything directly to Paul.
yep. And so look, I'll do it, having said it out loud, now I have to do it. You'll have it over the weekend.
And why don't you give us a deadline to have the comments back to you as well, so that we're not straggling?
Good, I will do.
Great. Thank you.
And the town is requesting that everything be in the hands of the town clerk's office by February 27th, so we're in good shape.
We have a little time.
Okay, I'm going to go on to item number 9. Does anybody else have anything under new business? Item number 9. Let me see. The first one is the capital project committee update. And I know Peter and Fred.
Peter Sucker.
Oh, Fred. Shoot.
I don't know how well I'll do it, but
Go for it.
so the most important thing is that we got the SRF application in on time. So that had.
You got what in on time?
The SRF application.
Oh, okay.
Funding.
For
Money,
the,
honey. You know?
for wastewater.
Yes.
Mhm.
That's pretty much the only thing on the capital project.
We've been talking
committee.
about.
The only thing we're doing is wastewater.
Mhm.
And I've learned more about these systems than I probably ever cared to know, but I'm
Uh-huh.
probably gonna learn a lot more.
Gonna learn a lot more, Laura.
So-
So we, so that's the most important thing. Now, we're waiting back to hear back from the state in terms of what they may want us to revisit, recount.
What's the timing on that as far as a
They-
response?
I don't believe they give themselves a,
Mhm.
you know, but one would hope within 30 days, because we have some deadlines coming up in January, you know, so those, we can't do that unless we get the comments back, because we're still at the 60% design phase.
Mm.
There's some question about whether we're really at 60%. I don't want to talk too much out of school here, but we're still struggling with getting the design. The tighter we get the design, the less chances we have of change orders. And we all know what that means in terms of cost and so forth. So, we've got some cost numbers from both the consultants. I don't know how much, they're definitely under budget for now.
For now, well, within the budget anyway,
Yeah,
yeah.
and hopefully it'll remain that way. But we still have a lot of work to do, and especially in terms of tightening up the plant design. That's where, you know, we're all a little uneasy right now in terms of how complete that is, because by January, we still have to have a 90% or 90%
90%.
design,
90%.
which has a smaller, usually has a 5%, or is it?
Oh, they reduced the contingency, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're gonna carry a 10% contingency where it should be 5, I believe, at 90%. We're gonna carry a 10 because the consultants aren't using a tariff. They're using an inflation adjustment for the contingency, but they're not a tariff. So I think the discussion went last meeting, we should add 5% for just in case this tariff thing turns around and bites us.
Oh,
We're
God.
bound by, I don't remember what the percentage is, but I think it's no more than 5% of the total cost can be bought outside of the United States. So there's something called BABA, you don't know about Build America, Buy American. So
Which was in place before the
before
tariffs.
this, yeah.
So we're not anticipating a big hit from
No,
tariffs.
and apparently the preferred equipment that we hope we get is American made and made in America. So the big ticket items like the SBR tanks and all those types of things, and the blowers and whatever those things are in the tanks. Those things are all seem to be made in America.
Or, yeah,
Mm.
made in America, or enough of it's made in America, so they qualify as
Right.
being made in America.
And, you know,
But
there's
that
been
doesn't
some
mean that
talk-
they won't get hit by tariff
Tariff.
on
No,
some of
no.
their raw materials and some of the parts they have to import, so.
And so I think, you know, we definitely have to release 2 contracts by next June, correct? Is that the number?
To get our money, yeah.
So we're trying to decide which contracts they should be. Clearly, one of them is going to be for the collection system. So we have, what do we, 4 or
He
5
wants to break
contracts for the
those up
collection
into
system?
five contracts.
So there's 2 pieces to this whole project, the collection system, the pipes in the ground, and then the plant, the processing plant. And the GHG is the consultant and engineer for the plant, and they're doing the design of that plant. Apex, which used to be Environmental Partners, is both our OPM, and they're also the design and consultant for the collection system. So they serve 2 roles. We need to have an OPM for the plant because it's a vertical project. We don't need one for a horizontal project, which is so they're kind of OPM for themselves, but we don't have an OPM for the collection system. But I think we have a lot of confidence in them because they're the ones who put the water system in, and they came in significantly under budget. So we have a lot of confidence in their capability to deliver
And it's
that.
the
that segment.
collection system's a simpler construction project than the plant.
The plant has a lot of moving
Lay
parts,
pipes.
and so I think, you know, we're gonna see how the schedule works out, but we're gonna make sure that we tighten up I think the focus right now is to tighten up the design on the plant so that we're confident that there are not gonna be a lot of loopholes, because the way they, and you know this better than I, they have this thing called file sub bids,
Mm.
so different.
Wish
pieces of-
I could say I understood it totally, but
I don't either, but it basically, you know, electrical and HVAC and whatever, they put them out separately to bid, people bid on them, and then a general contractor has to accept the overall. It's a crazy system, but that's the way the state works. And so some of these, you know, it's a process that it's gonna be challenging for us, I think, you know, in terms of who gets picked and who gets picked as the general contractor for this thing, but I'm cautiously optimistic about it.
Mhm.
I don't know about you.
I am,
Well,
couple of things. So we've got some pretty raw estimates that supposedly based on this 60% completion stage of the plans, which is still a long way to go in a lot of areas. They're not 60%, but you know, they're looking good compared to a $170 million budget. But a long way to go. But one of the things they're doing is the OPM Apex is hiring a third party cost estimator to develop their own estimate for the treatment plant. And then the GHD, the engineers that are
Mhm.
designing the plant, have
same
done
thing?
their estimate.
Yeah.
And so then they're gonna compare the two and find out, get them apples to apples and then find out what's different. So I think they said they were gonna do that by the end of the month, which is coming right up.
I'm hoping to see it.
So by next week, we should
Wow.
have a firmer estimate, but it's still just an estimate.
Yeah.
Until
was-
it goes out to bid, nobody really,
And we're still doing, we're still in the process, we're really not at 60%. So, and there's a lot of value engineering pieces that are still kind of up in the air in terms of whether they're gonna do it or they're not gonna do it. And I'll give you an example. One of them is the thickness of this is a simple one. The thickness of the concrete walls. The engineer says, well, we want a 2-foot wall. The OPM says you don't need a 2-foot wall, you need an
well,
18.
at least not everywhere, yeah. Right.
Yeah, not everywhere, right? And so those kind of value engineering, and then, and believe it or not, 6 inches or.
They make a
more of
big
concrete,
difference.
Yeah.
Over the amount of concrete.
Oh, yeah.
But is a big number.
Yeah.
And we still haven't got to the whole idea, we may decide that we put the salt shed out to bid by the town and not through that project, not through that, the engineers. Because we have to move the salt shed that's out there now. They may be good at building sewage treatment plants, but anybody can build a salt shed. And so maybe we can get that done cheaper. So there's some things like that that are still in play.
There was one kind of bombshell at the last meeting, which was that so they've actually located.
I wasn't gonna bring that one up.
I figure why not? It's a finance committee. They've figured out locations for the pump stations around town. And obviously can't gravity feed all the way from everywhere in town. So there's 4 pump stations.
300 and you're talking about that number?
But there's, yeah. But even with 4 pump stations, there are going to be 300 out of the 800 properties that are going to be required to hook up that are actually going to have to include a grinder, what's so-called grinder pump, because they're going to have to, their outlet of their current waste pipe is below the level that the sewer pipe's going to be in the street. So they're
Okay.
going to, they're going to be, they're going to need to, and who's going to pay for it and all that is a little up in the air, but going to need to install a grinder pump, which only has like 75-gallon backup capacity. So they may want to be required to, who knows how it'll shake out, to install a generator, just in case the power goes out.
Oh, God.
So, which could be a huge expense.
Expensive.
Well, it's not a full generator, because that's what Orleans has done. They adopt as part of their sewer regs, that if you have to have a grinder pump, which I do, because I'm in a hole,
Yeah.
that you have to have a backup power source. But it doesn't need to be a full generator. It could be just a handheld that you can connect, that can just
No,
evacuate the grinder pump up to the street.
but it's still, it's.
But it's still
I-
gonna
the
cost.
number hit me like a ton of bricks.
Do you have one of those, a small generator? I mean, I
I will when I do the grinder pump, yeah.
wonder what the cost of it is and how big it has to be. We're trying to get information on how
Yeah,
big
that-
the electrical.
I
requirement.
believe that we have the cost of the grinder pumps in our budget, but.
Right, we.
Well, that's
Yep.
We're not sure about.
usually the big decision
Generator
point. So I unfortunately wasn't around. I couldn't go to the last meeting, but 300 is a lot different than what we originally were told, which we thought was around 80.
Yeah,
So maybe I should touch base with Jackie Tupper, because
yeah, she could explain why.
I
Apparently,
think because before we were looking at either 5 or 6 pump stations, so maybe, so there's a,
said the 5th pump station would only
18
only-
properties.
13 or 18
Oh,
more
okay.
So it
properties
didn't,
would be able.
it didn't
It wasn't.
justify the $2 million to build the
right,
pump
so
station.
it's a cost equation of what's the cost of the
Yeah.
grinder pumps versus the cost of the pump station. And are you gonna bring the grinder pumps in as part of the project cost, right?
Their cost projection so far is that they're assuming that the grinder pumps are gonna be paid as part of the project.
Yeah.
The pumps, but not the generator.
Or the installation costs or any of the other
Right.
things
For
associated
each property.
with 300 properties.
Yeah. Okay.
That was a bit of a surprise.
Did you see this yet? Because this was something
No.
you requested, was the cash flow.
I saw that was sent, but I didn't get a chance to look at
But
it.
they have put together some cash flows, and like I said earlier, it's a little bit Greek to me in terms of getting them together and then melding them with your budget and your expectations of when we're gonna draw down funds, because we can only draw down $50 million every year. So it's, you know, whether we spend it or not, there's a little bit of a juggling act there in terms of letting out contracts and not going over the 50 million, because we don't want to pay for it ourselves, for not going too far under it either. That's where Rich comes in. He works his magic.
A lot of moving pieces.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, and
Oh,
you know,
and-
I think right now, it's just, it's a lot of pressure
Mm.
going on right now, just to get things done. And I think we're going to adjust the schedule a little bit so that we can take the pressure off where it is right now and give a little more time to get things done right. So
So we're not hit with a lot of change orders, mistakes and
mhm.
stuff. And also maybe hit a better construction period.
Yeah.
In the better weather. But yeah, you know, things are really happening. There's a internal meeting with staff every week on Tuesdays, which Steve Kanachik has been going to. And then sending us a kind of a brief report after. And then once a month, we have our CPC meeting with the engineers and Jackie and Rich, and yeah, things are going along pretty well, I think.
Have they started any, like prep work at the DPW site? I know you mentioned the
they're
salt
starting
shed.
to take some of the junk out of there,
Yeah.
you know, it's John, right?
John,
John Ruffley?
Yeah, he's great. But you know, we did a little site visit there one day several months ago, and I think we were all stunned at the amount of stuff that
Junk.
you get dumped there. You know, it was like the town dumping ground
Mm.
at the dump.
At the dump.
You
Oh,
know?
it's gonna take
I mean, there was
time.
the one that got me was somebody got you know, the cars they used to shuttle the people up to the Coast Guard beach.
Mhm.
There
The
was an
the
old-
shuttles?
Those.
The old
over
shuttle
there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And it was like, what the heck is this doing?
How long has that been sitting there?
For eons.
Since they
Yeah,
stopped
yeah,
using.
because they haven't used that shuttle in
I
a
don't
long
know,
time.
but Neil was the pack rat, I don't know who was,
Somebody.
but.
Well, that's funny.
Stuff going in there,
Yeah,
and so John has been, I don't know if you
Cleaning
noticed over
things
by the
out.
metal pile, it's been
Yeah,
cleared
I
off.
saw the
Yeah, so
picture.
he's starting it, but there's a big portion of site work that has to be done.
Right.
That, again, we might be able to carve out of the engineer's part of the project, because it's something that the our consultants, the OPM feels that we could prime out to local people to like clear trees and just bulldoze and
Yeah.
level a lot and things that don't require, you know, knowing that the pipe's gotta be at this level and all that, that could, again, save us more money. So, Steve Kanachek is a dog and a bone about value engineering stuff, so we just let him go.
Just turn him loose.
He's earning his paycheck.
Oh, man, I'm telling you.
He's found several mistakes or omissions and stuff in the plans and stuff, which the engineers are you know, glad that he spotted them, so.
Yeah.
He's doing a good job.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's
I
it.
just have one question. It's not on the wastewater part. Is on the school. Originally, everything was supposed to be finished by the end of December of 2025. Is that still?
Oh, this
True.
is school.
Yeah,
Um,
the school,
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
Nauset Regional High School.
right. Yeah, that's still the target. They're gonna make the move during Christmas vacation.
Hmm.
Actually, I was at a meeting today, and they're going to take delivery on the FF&E, the furniture and stuff for phase 2, beginning November 3rd, which is
Coming up.
We could-
a week from
After next week.
after next week, the following Monday, I think, yeah.
Mhm.
So that stuff's starting to come in. Yeah, it's crawling towards completion.
Completion.
And then we're still fighting about a lot of things that, several things that are being done under protest because the contractor doesn't think that they should have to pay for, you know, so that all that stuff is gonna have to be fought over. But the project is not being held up because of any of that.
Good.
Are the change orders number, is that considered excessive for this kind of project?
I don't think so. Steve Konachik, who went through, who built 30 schools in Connecticut.
Yeah.
He said 6% is kind of industry standard,
Mhm.
and that's what we set our contingency at. Some of us on the committee would wanted to set it higher because it's mostly a remodeling project,
Yes,
and those always cost
makes a
more.
big difference.
Yeah, but they also didn't want to ask the towns for any more money than they had to, so they settled on 6%, and that's the number we're gonna be right at it.
Well, what you sent out, the remaining contingency is 1.6 million.
Yeah, a lot of that is, yeah, we've spoken for. It hasn't been spent, but it's coming
Will
down the
be.
pike, yeah. And we get curveballs
I'm
on
sure
a
you-
weekly basis, and some of them from our friendly town of
Expensive?
Eastham Fire Department that now wants guardrails around all the buildings and on the that face the quote unquote courtyard. It's a question of whether it's technically a courtyard or not, because courtyards do require some kind of guardrails, but that at some point they get so big that the point of them is lost. So anyway, could be a $90,000 thing that's got to come out of that. So we're trying to reserve
Mm.
money for anything that could come at us, but it's hard to predict what's coming from week to week and from fire chief to fire chief. I think we're on our third or fourth fire chief since the project
Since the
was
project began.
designed.
Oh, yeah, that's
The
true.
Fire chief 2 said, oh yeah,
Yeah,
that's fine,
Glenn
go
was the
ahead with
first
that.
one, right?
Fire
Yeah.
chief
That's
4
funny.
says, so that's it kind of
And same for, they were the same four that went for water too.
yeah. So, but no, I think mostly good news on that front.
The reports are great, Peter.
Yeah, that's our OPM that does those.
Yeah,
We're
really
on
good.
our, my God, you talk about cast of characters. The OPM actually sold to another company,
Oh,
after what, remember it was Daedalus to begin.
oh, Daedalus,
Daedalus.
Mhm.
Daedalus.
Their CHA bought them, but even if that hadn't happened, the people that we worked with in the beginning are long gone, and we get new people, so it's a 5-year project, so you can sort of.
But at least with EPG, we got the same, I mean.
You had
Jackie Tupper has
consistent
been
people,
One
yeah.
consistent,
And we're gonna have her right through wastewater, it looks like,
She's-
which is.
she's an SRF.
You guys have
She's great.
continued, there's been a continuum with all of
Mm.
you, which is a really good thing.
Peter was
And
on board.
especially Steve
No.
Kanonchik, who is sitting in the empty chair right there.
Yep,
Yeah.
Steve's done it.
So it's good.
But the team from Apex, APG, I can't, they're terrific.
Mhm.
really.
Good.
They've done a lot of this stuff and.
Very impressed.
So they're doing good, they're earning their money.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Mm.
Okay, I'm looking at the item number 9 on our agenda, and we talked about item A. Item B is the school efficiency and regionalization study, and I did just attend the Eastham Elementary School meeting the other day where the superintendent put out put a letter. Anyway, he's saying that the efficiency and regionalization study is going to be providing I'm not sure, put together meetings to be held in the elementary schools. And anyone from any of the 4 communities is welcome to attend any of the meetings that work best for your schedule. And they're going to be from 6 to 7:30. And I've got the dates here. I won't go through it all here, but they're going to be supposedly, and this is a little confusing to me, on 11/3, they say Wellfleet Elementary or Nauset Middle. Then 11/5 Orleans or Eastham Elementary cafeteria, then a thing in Brewster, and then a virtual meeting. Anyway, all I'm saying is that these meetings are apparently going to be scheduled going forward. And anybody, as I said, can attend any of them. And they're going to be from 6 to 7:30. So I think I'm going to try to get this straightened out to exactly where they're going to be held, because they can't be held at two places at the same time. And if anybody's interested in attending, as far as the study is concerned, because they're looking for input from the community. And I'll go, let me see, the next one is the Nauset Regional School District Agreement Update. That's Jerry
That's me.
and you.
Yep. So I remember the last update I gave you, but the district, how far back? The Brewster and Eastham and the towns had the thought that it might help some of the spikes in the town assessments if we took a 3-year rolling average of enrollment numbers, because the assessments are based on enrollment
Yeah.
instead of just jumping around every year. So that was, so in order to do that, you have to get it into the amend the regional agreement.
That sort of started everything.
That started everything about 2 years ago, 3 years.
Yeah.
So when they looked at the regional agreement and dusted it off, they found out that it was totally out of date. It's like 25 years old. I think it might be the original regional agreement. It didn't meet any of the current rules and regs that the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education require. So they realized that they had to do a rewrite of the regional agreement, and just by law they had to, and then to get this rolling average idea into it. So that's how it started. And the school committee formed a subcommittee to look at that. And they have their legal staff kind of driving the bus on that. And then parallel, the towns decided that they wanted to have some more formal input into the new regional agreement. And the towns of Eastham, Orleans, and Brewster got together and hired an attorney. It's KP Law, actually, which, it's our town council. I'm not sure about the others. Wellfleet didn't join that effort. But so the lawyer for those 3 towns, the way it developed was, instead of just taking the region's proposed revision and attacking that, the lawyer drew up a totally different proposed revision, and which had all the input from all the towns, from the 3 towns, not Wellfleet. So where it stands now is that proposal has been delivered to the school committee. There's going to be a meeting on November 13th between the town representatives, and I believe the 2 lawyers are going to be there. And that's going to be the start of trying to get it into one document, but it's not going to happen tomorrow.
So didn't Jerry redline the heck out of it?
Yeah, Jerry
Working on it, he eviscerated the current agreement.
Yeah, he eviscerated it,
And so he handed that over to KP Law.
the
And then
KP Law, and then the
and who's
couple
the
people
attorney for
from
the?
Brewster,
Nancy,
Oh, you're right.
Nancy,
a couple people from Brewster were really interested in it.
I think
And
Gave
Nancy Company.
as much criticism as
Nan-
Jerry did.
Nancy, I think.
Nancy Campany
Company.
is the region's lawyer. Yeah, school committee's lawyer. And Lauren, remember her last name, but she was involved in that committee that you were on for a while. Anyway, she's the KP Law. She's for the school. So we'll and I've read both. The exercises made me happy. I didn't go to law school and become a lawyer.
Building was easier.
I've read both of them. They're not, in my opinion, as a builder, they're not that different, but the lawyers are both
Oh, they'll have
freaking their tails off.
I should.
Right. So I don't think it's gonna be that hard to bring them together, but
But is this rolling average a key part
Yeah,
of that?
it's still in there.
Well, that's
It's still in there. After all this, it's still in there.
Well, although.
Point.
I don't
I didn't know if it get lost. in the shuffle.
I don't want to go too deep into the weeds, but you think you're familiar with that, the two different methods of assessment, the statutory
yeah,
method
right,
and
right.
the alternative
Alternative.
method?
I never really understood anyway.
Well, we won't go there, but if we end up with a statutory method, which for instance, they just used this past year, that rolling average becomes less important because like half of your assessment is sort of set by
Set
whatever
the
the
state.
state tells you your town is, income level or wealth level or whatever it's based on. So it's it may be less important than it turned out to be, but it's good that they're doing it. And then there's going to be, I think, a requirement that it's revisited every 5 years. So
So
it won't happen again.
The implementation of this is targeted for
Yeah,
not this fiscal year, but next fiscal year?
town meetings. So if these lawyers can finally agree on anything, and the school committee and the representatives, then it has to get passed by all 4 town meetings too.
Yeah.
How
It has to go to
impactful
DESI
is it-
first, though.
Yeah.
So it's
big
not
thing
coming up,
is-
not coming up for this time.
No,
So how impactful would it be if Wellfleet's not even at the table?
I think they're going to be at the table on the 13th, but they just weren't, they didn't want to participate with a lawyer for some reason.
Okay, all right.
But I don't know if they've had any input or ideas. If they have, I haven't heard about them.
I'm really glad that Jerry's on it.
But from a budgetary perspective, Rich, if this thing did go to town meeting, it did get passed, when does it affect our budget or our contribution?
Wouldn't be for another year yet.
So we're talking 2028?
Yeah.
Well, and if it didn't go to the 2028 annual town meeting, then it probably wouldn't be effective till 2029 because you gotta
Yeah.
implement it first. You can't prepare the budget on the basis of this might pass and then it fails at one town. So you'd have an effective
Yeah,
date usually.
it has to be approved by all 4.
Yeah.
By all 4.
Well, but yeah, Rich's point is proved at this town meeting, it can't go into effect until the
No,
following.
right,
the whole
the
fiscal
following
year
fiscal
later.
year, following
So
fiscal
is
year.
that one of the funds would be allocated and then it would be voted to use them, or is?
No, just the agreement would be modified and whatever the regional agreement provides for allocating assessments
Okay.
would have to be followed in the next year's budget process.
When did you get the enrollment numbers yet? Don't they come out October 1st?
Yeah, I haven't gotten them though.
I haven't seen them either.
We're supposed to get them by as of October 1st.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know when they release them though.
yeah, I don't know. I can remember asking for them last year because we
they
didn't
came-
get them in the
They come
a
out
timely fashion.
in October though. We should,
Yeah.
I'll track them down.
The-
Because that gives us a little indication on how our assessment's gonna move.
Mhm,
If
mhm,
our
mhm.
enrollment numbers are,
Yeah, change.
different. And it doesn't take that much of a difference. from one
No,
year
it
to another.
doesn't. You
5
know,
or
so
10.
for example, this lease to locals program that we're running with Orleans, one of the decision points we had to make is if we're both running the program and somebody from Orleans wants to move to Eastham, is that something that we allow? Because initially it's just for Eastham. You know, if we're on our own,
Mhm.
or at least a locals program would be only for Eastham residents. But now we're doing it with Orleans. So one of the questions was, well, if somebody from Orleans wants to move to Eastham, are we going to allow that? And I forget where we landed on it. I think we've said go ahead and do it. But I evaluated, well, what if it's a family? And that brings 2 children into town that are now on our books.
Mhm.
So we think we're running this nice housing program that's going to provide housing for people. But I did the math and it was like, you know, it's $40,000 more on the assessment because we've
On the
got
schools,
reducing Orleans enrollment, increasing ours.
Mhm.
So it gets to be complicated and I'm not a big fan. I mean, the regional agreement's going to be what it is, but maybe the 5-year review period from now, Peter, we have a different discussion of how we even fund schools. And that would require me to do some work with the legislature because that's tough to change. But I'm just not a fan of how we measure enrollment, especially in a regional housing
Mhm.
crisis. You know, Orleans has a bunch of housing coming online.
That's right.
Wellfleet's got some housing coming online. If people move into that housing, are they gonna see school costs go up because of that increase? And the answer is yeah, and it's just a matter of where are they coming from? Are they gonna come from Eastham and go to there and now ours percentage is down and theirs is up? Until we go and do something at tea time and then we get that, you know, the
Yeah.
rolling average, you know, helps on that a little bit,
Mhm.
but it just has always irked me, and don't get me going, but why do we pay for regional school districts on a different basis than we do for everything else in town?
Mhm.
We don't charge for the library based on who goes to the library. We don't charge, you know, other than the sticker fees. We don't charge for the dump based on who goes to the dump or the police department or the fire department. It's based on property values. So why don't we, and there's there's a base cost of you ought to contribute to your school just because you have a school.
Mhm.
Now, it doesn't matter that you might only have 10 students going there, but it doesn't seem right that you only pay for the 10 students when you need to have a base cost just to have a school in the
Mhm.
first place.
Certain,
So-
certain
Yeah.
costs
So I'm a big
automatically.
proponent, you know, there's other things to look at, but other states, it's on the property tax and the schools send out their own bills.
But how would you divide it between towns, between the big towns
Oh,
and
they all
small
look-
towns?
We all have properties and they're all valued. So, you know, I did this in Yarmouth.
Assessed.
What's the assessed value of the towns in the district versus any individual?
So do it on the overall assessed value.
So, you know, that's a huge lift and a huge discussion. But I just feel like
I think I like that idea.
when you're trying to
Yeah, me
develop
too.
housing,
It is without, I've never been in a regional, so I've always been into the.
but when you're trying to
town-
develop
town
housing
for-
to address a housing crisis regionally,
Yeah.
that seems like a more equitable way to allocate costs than based on where students live.
Mhm.
Especially if we're
And-
getting
and
into
when
this,
You're trying to build a school.
and especially when
because-
we get into this regional and efficiency study,
Mhm.
where one of the components of that is, do we need all the elementary schools we have? And why can't somebody who lives in Wellfleet that works in Orleans bring their kid to Orleans Elementary School if that's a better fit?
Right, right.
But
They
under-
may work in Orleans.
right,
That's what you're saying, yeah.
so
But that's not allowed at this point.
right.
Yeah.
We're just opening a big can of worms now. So hopefully
Oh,
nobody.
Yeah, we just.
The end of the
added
meeting.
another thread.
I know, I wanted
There
to,
was-
I wanted to
That's
close the
right.
high school and
Well, I
And
would
there-
say something, but I'm not gonna say it. I'm not gonna say it while we're online here.
Exactly.
Oh, okay. I'm going to, agenda item number 9, number D, and, Peter and I and, others have been in touch, well, with Maura, Noonan Carey, who is on the school committee, and we thought it would be a good idea to invite her to one of our meetings to discuss the, issues associated with the budget process, and any questions we might have on the whole school costs going forward. You might want to,
Yeah, instead of,
you've spoken to Maura.
Instead of waiting till, we usually get the school budgets like 2 weeks before the thing has to go to the
Mhm.
printer. So we talked about it last year too, trying to get them in earlier, and so Maura's agreed to come in at the next meeting. And which is, she's East Ham's representative, and actually we have 2 representatives on the regional school committee, and Maura Noonan Carey and then Sarah Stair, and they're both gonna come.
Mhm.
They both happen to be on the regional school committee about 3 years ago. I think they used to do their budget as a 10-member committee, but about 3 or 4 years ago, they set up a budget and finance subcommittee to kind of go over all the budget stuff and then present it to the committee as a finished product. And Maura and Sarah are both on that committee. Also, back up a little, I've been going to those meetings for about 3 years now, the Budget and Finance Committee subcommittee meetings. So I'm fairly familiar with how it works. And Mary's been going to the elementary school committee meetings. So from the 2 of us, we've kind of been covering the schools. But yeah, I would just as a side mention that if anybody ever has any questions about any of the regional school budget or the elementary school, to just send them along, and if we can't answer them, we'll get the answer. So, yeah, so the budget, there's, a whole new regime down there for the region. We've got a new superintendent. We had a new finance director.
What's your name, Lee?
Hmm? The
Superintendent is
superintendent's
Glenn Brand.
Brand.
And Brand,
Giovanna?
Yeah.
she's,
Yeah, Giovanna's
he
gone.
retired.
Okay.
And Jim Nowak, who was her assistant, has for 25 at least years, also is gone.
Right.
So they found a new superintendent and then a new budget finance director. He was only here for a couple of months, I think,
That's right.
and which I can understand because there's 5 different budgets that comprise the
Right,
Nauset
yeah,
school budget.
before it, and then,
Uh,
It's the schools and the Nauset Regional.
Yeah. And maybe it was more than he had in mind. Anyway, he didn't last. And so they're currently searching for the new one. I think they've got some interested parties. But luckily, they do have this interim finance director, Bob Dutch, who has vast experience with Cape Cod schools, and I think he was involved with Cape Tech and others. Everybody seems to really, and he's got great new ideas. They're installing a new software system this year. They're going to actually run the old one and the new one parallel for a year, so they can switch over to the new one.
Right.
The new one is supposed to be
It'll be a nightmare.
much better. So, there's progress on that front. And then one of the things that the superintendent already did is, and I'll send this out after this meeting. I didn't want to load you with stuff before the meeting, but he's developed a budget schedule and the school committee turned it to the school committee and they've approved it. So he's got, and this was a big thing in the regional agreement discussion, is getting hard dates as hard as you can for things to be done, because all the finance committees in towns were frustrated with how late the information came in. Part of that is just of necessity with the way the state sends out their chapter 90 funds and 70 funds and stuff. So yeah, I'll send out the budget schedule, which has dates where he's going to have preliminary. Let me borrow yours since
Sure.
I have mine. Preliminary budget presentation to Eastham, then a recommended budget, and then a final budget. And then there's also a budget workshop. So we'll send you all those dates. But and most of those dates are pretty close to what everybody's wishing for in the regional agreement. So yeah, I think we're on a good track. And if they can get a new finance director, that'll be even better. Oh, and the other thing I wanted to send out before Maura got here, and I'll send it out right after the meeting, is the budget primer that
Yep.
one of the Brewster finance member prepared last year. This thing, and he kind of went through basically for his own, to help himself understand it, I think. But it's very helpful. All the components of the budget and how they're arrived at and how they work together and the dates and the whole timeframe, the state. So I'll send that out. And these dates for this year. And then Maura had asked if it would be helpful to her if people had questions that they knew about before the meeting, to send them in to her so she could prepare answers.
Would you want everybody to send them to you and you
Yeah, why
send them to Maura
Yeah.
instead of all of us doing our
Yeah,
own little?
I'll send this stuff.
Peter, I can send you an email, but the 2 questions that I'm interested, because I've been talking to Bill at the elementary school, of concern, and this has to do with how they changed the budget last year, where they budgeted a higher amount of shared costs, which I was
Yes.
fine
yeah,
with,
Yeah.
but as long as the actual isn't the budget. The actual that gets charged to us has to be based on what actually happens.
Mhm.
So a budget's a budget, but not necessarily an actual. And so fine if they're gonna allocate shared costs to a budget on that basis, but that doesn't represent what we're gonna pay them. What we're gonna pay them is what the actual shared costs are. And the same goes for special ed with they have a special ed preschool that runs out of Brewster, and they're charging that back to each individual town now instead of a region cost. And I think what was budgeted for us, I might have the numbers wrong, but for sake of argument, say 6 students were budgeted for us,
Right.
and we only have 2. So we should only be charged for what we actually have, not what was budgeted. So, so if Maura can maybe
Okay,
address that, or we could have a discussion about that, make sure they understand on the school committee, actual costs versus budgets.
okay. Yeah, so that sort of thing, anything comes to mind, send it back to me and I'll get it to them.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
then, of course, we'll just have, I told her it was gonna be an informal discussion
Yeah.
and just to try to meet them and to, yeah, have a back and forth and try to understand the process.
So anybody that has any questions, send them to Peter and Peter will send them on to Maura. And she is scheduled for our next meeting with Sarah Stair.
And we've also got Tina coming as well.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, hopefully that'll be relatively brief though, so.
Let me see, I don't have a town manager report that was sent out for this past select board meeting, so I don't have anything up there. The only question that I have, Rich, is, do you know anything about what the status is of the workshops or whatever is going on as far as finding a replacement for Jackie?
No, they've received some, or they are, or will be receiving some feedback from the consultant they hired, and they will be deciding how they want to move forward.
Mhm.
But it hasn't been decided yet.
Oh, I know that Rick White was meeting with folks.
Mhm.
And so he's going to be putting together a report for the select board
Yep.
as a result of his meetings.
Right.
Okay. Is there a date or do you know what the?
Probably is, but I'm not sure what it is.
Yeah.
But it's very near term,
Yeah,
whatever it is.
okay. All righty. Thank you. As I said, our normal meeting for next month would have been on the 27th, which is Thanksgiving. So we have decided, and as we just mentioned and Peter mentioned, been in touch with Maura to have our meeting on the Thursday before that, which is November 20th. I did get a message just now from Wayne saying that if we were to go on the 20th, that our meeting would be in the small meeting room. Because of, obviously with everything going on with Thanksgiving, probably meetings are being pushed into a smaller time frame, and so his message to me is if you change to Thursday, the 13th, you could be in Earl Mountain Room and also be open-ended, but given the fact that we've been in touch with Maura and set everything up for the 20th, I would like to keep it for the 20th, which is actually a Thursday, a week before our normal meeting. So that'll be November 20th at 4 p.m.
That was on our original schedule too, so.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
that's-
took
yeah,
that,
stick
because I
with
marked
that.
my calendar
yeah,
yesterday.
yeah.
We knew it was
On the agenda,
we knew
we
it
knew
was
it was Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that anybody would like to bring up, ask a question about, et cetera? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Yes, please.
Second.
Please?
You know, I'm tired.
Me too. That was a lot.
Okay, so that is, oopsie. So that's Kate. And do I have a second?
Second.
Patty? Any further discussion?
That's right, maybe. we
All in
should-
favor of adjourning? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7, 0, and I have 6:25.